Welcome back to Where Passion and Purpose Collide. I have two incredible guests today with me, Tafa Jefferson and Chad Fotheringham. Did I say that right?
You did, absolutely.
Oh my gosh, sometimes I can get tongue tied. My brain still sometimes thinks in German instead of English. So, these gentlemen are the founders of Amada Senior Care. They're going to tell you all about that here in just a minute. But I wanted to welcome both of you. Thank you for making time for me today.
Thanks for having
Absolutely,
us.
Rebecca. We really appreciate the opportunity to share with you.
Oh, it's going to be so much fun. So, I want you guys to tell the story of how the two of you met, became fast friends, and ultimately chose to grow Amada Senior Care business.
Tafa, you go first.
Yeah, sure. I'll go first, and thank you again for having us share with you our story. Well, the story actually started in college at the University of Pacific, up in Stockton, California. I was fortunate enough to play football, earn a scholarship, and when I was picking the schools that I wanted to go do my undergraduate studies, I selected a small private university in Northern California, University of the Pacific, because they had a new entrepreneurial program that they were launching, and it was the first of its kind. And this was back in 1994, so that really piqued my interest. And um, I was a scholarship athlete, and naturally, I was making friends in the locker room and also in the classroom. And Chad Fotheringham was my quarterback, and that's how we met. And then, as we were going through our studies, we just noticed that we were taking a lot of similar classes. So we formed a very quick relationship that lasted to this day, and we're fortunate enough to be great business partners and running a company that's growing. And so that's how it started. We met in on the football field first, then in business school. That's where we first met.
That's amazing. So, Chad, when you first met Tafa, you being the quarterback and him being kind of the muscles up front there, um,
It wasn't all muscles, I must admit.
what was your first impression of Tafa?
Well, I think anyone's first impression of Tafa is you have this larger than life person and personality. And just I would say the thing probably that I remember the most is just his smile and his warmth. He's just a very warm and engaging person. So for me, that was kind of, and I think it was, that was first impression. And as we kind of moved on through football, it was continued. He has a real desire to learn. I remember back in college, we were in a lot of the same classes, and we were in the entrepreneurial club together. And it was just, I would say, an insatiable desire to learn and grow. And it's kind of interesting because he told the first part of the story. And the second part of the story was after football had ended, he went and played in the NFL for a
That's
little
right.
while. And I wasn't so fortunate. They actually dropped the football program after his last year and after my junior year. And so I just kind of finished school, and then we kind of went our separate ways. He went in the NFL, did that for a little while. And then right after his time in the NFL, he started a business. And I, at the same time, was kind of following a different track. I went and worked in corporate America. I got a job in pharmaceuticals. And, 10 years later, here we are. He's running a successful company in Orange County. I'd been in 10 years with Pfizer, and we got back together for lunch. And after lunch, he invited me over to one of his clients' homes who was on hospice. And I remember kind of thinking, hey, is this okay that we go in this house? And, is this going to be good? And we went in there and we spent an hour with the client, and we walked out, and I told him, look, you're really fortunate. You're very blessed to do what you do. You make a big difference in people's lives. And the next week he invited me back. And at that point, he was really changing his focus. And that's when Amada was kind of born at that time. He invited me to come and start a business with him. He was expanding his current nurse registry into an employer model, non-medical caregiving company. And so that's when Amada started. And that's kind of the back end story. It was, for me, he kind of pulled me out of corporate America. He had always been an entrepreneurial mind by nature, even in college. And at that point, it kind of took me down a different path of becoming an entrepreneur. And that's kind of when it all started. That's the story.
That's just amazing. These two macho, handsome football players with this entrepreneurial mind coming back together in a business that really is a heart oriented business in my mind, right? You're
Mhm.
taking care of the elderly, you are taking care of them sometimes in their worst situations. So, this compassion, this empathy, and this tenderness that both of you have underneath these tough exteriors is just a beautiful thing. Tafa, can you tell us how in the world did you end up in elder care, nursing care? What took you that direction from the Chicago Bears?
Well, it's quite interesting, Rebecca. My journey with seniors started when I was a young child. So I was raised by my grandmother. She was a very influential force in my life because there were five children, and we didn't have a lot when we grew up, but we had a home that was filled with love and support. And so my parents, they were always working hard, in some cases working two and three jobs just to provide for the family. And so my grandmother raised us, and she didn't speak any English at all. So what was interesting is my mother was studying to be a nurse, and unfortunately, after my father got out of the naval, he was serving overseas. He returned home. They had my brother sooner than they had expected, and so they started their family early. She was never able to finish nursing school, but her desire to serve seniors and to serve a passion for serving others really played out in her entire career. And so she became a caregiver, and when she became a caregiver, I would always have seniors that would come to our home and visit on the holidays. So they were like an extension of my grandmother. So I've always had elderly women and folks who emulated that grandmother kind of figure around me from as far back as I can remember. And so, that had a huge imprint in me. And when I went to study business and I came home from business school, I was trying to figure things out. I was fresh out of the NFL, didn't have a career path. I knew I wanted to do something in healthcare. And she recommended one day, why don't you start a senior care company? That's the company that I work for. And the owners of my particular company, they do very well. And they're doing a wonderful work in the community, helping others, serving others. And she said, I love my job, and so I looked into it. And that's when I started it in 1997, ran the business by myself for 10 years, made a ton of mistakes. And when Chad and I got connected back together, I said, there are things that we can do together that could really change the course of our lives, but also have a profound impact in our own community. So I was always geared up as a sales guy, right? I love connecting with people. I love being around people. And so it was a natural fit. Chad's wired that way as well. And he's done a lot of work in the community, even prior to coming into Amada, serving, we do a lot of service work for our church, right? And so it was just a natural extension of what we're already doing, providing jobs, taking care of families that are in the community. And it's just great. I mean, it never gets old. It's one of those things where when you're able to go and help a family during a very difficult time of transition or time of need to help them recuperate, from the hospital, and you come through for them, it's a very rewarding, a line of work to be involved with. So again, it never gets old.
Never gets old. I'm a baby boomer, so my parents are, in their 90s. I just lost my mom just a handful of weeks. In fact, we do our memorial service next week. And then I
Mm.
lost my stepmother about 4 months later, and then my father went into the nursing home. So
Oh,
I know what it's like to be in those difficult decisions where we need folks like Amada Senior Care franchisees to step in and take over some of these difficult things that have to be done, for that, like, especially my generation that has parents that age. So, uh, guys, you're doing a wonderful job. You're so appreciated. I'm going to shift to Chad for just a second. quarterback, Pfizer executive, then to Amada. What did you bring from your quarterbacking days and your Pfizer corporate mentality days to Amada?
Wow, that's a good question. I would say it's very different. What I brought from sports and football is probably a lot different than what I brought from, I don't know, maybe it's similar and there's some similarities, but what I brought from football, I would say most is a teamwork approach. I think that Tafa and I really both enjoy really being on a team. We have a set of 6 core values that we kind of live by. And I think number one is compassion. And I think that the ability to connect is huge. And I think that in corporate America, you don't see that as much, and even on teams. But our second value is competitively driven to be the best. And I think that when you're on a team, obviously that's really infused into teamwork. It's also infused into corporate America. And I think that in corporate America, what I learned is processes, systems, especially as it pertains to sales and how to sell. And my last job was even in education, where we were a little bit more about community outreach and about disease management and working with different large scale HMOs. So I think what I brought to the table was, I think the best thing I think I carried over from corporate America would probably be just an understanding on how to sell, and the best salespeople are always associated with education. And if you can look out first for who you're selling to and try to give them resources and tools and education to help them, I think that's an approach we take in Amada all the time right now. And we call it resource-based selling, but we're not here to go out and sell home care. We're here to go out and give resources to the seniors families. So many times the seniors that we come across, they're in the situation that you kind of explained, where they're just in chronic panic mode and they don't know what to do. And so what they really need is resources. They need understanding, what's the difference between going home to a skilled nursing facility and going home with home health? What's the difference between home health and home care, which is non-medical caregivers? So a lot of our resources that we give are educating families on what exactly is out there, and then also giving them tools to help find financial resources to go after that. So I would say those are the 2 things that I kind of try to carry over from both those experiences.
Yeah, I'm big on the whole edify piece too. It's all about understanding, and when we're into overwhelm, we don't even know where to begin. We're so emotional and in chaos. So to have someone that steadies the ship, so to speak, and provides that education and that knowledge. So as children or, family members of those that need care, giving us the education that we need. But again, I do think your Pfizer experience, as well as your quarterbacking experience and your entrepreneurial education, kind of combined to make you this wonderful co-leader within Amada Senior Care.
Thank you. Yeah, what's interesting is Tafa and I we're so different. He's been an entrepreneur his whole life, and I was in corporate America for quite a while. So I think that that's a unique blend because we see things very differently. And from a corporate perspective versus an entrepreneurial perspective. So I think it blends well. We just got to continue to learn to grow and listen. And I think that's the same thing with our franchise partners. Even within the franchise partners we bring in, we try to have a very diverse, different set of minds within our company. And it's so important to pull different mindsets and different perspectives from different people and their backgrounds. It makes such a better system when we kind of learn and grow from each other.
Yeah, and then I totally agree. So Tafa, your time in the NFL, um, were there transferable skills in your mind there? You talked about the teamwork, Chad. Do you believe there was some transferable skills from your time in the NFL, and how have you used that time um, in terms of actually building the Amada brand? Has your celebrityum, if that's a word, um, had and have benefited you in the growing of Amada Senior Care?
Yeah, you know what's interesting is I think it's so important for children to participate in sports, even if it's sports, music, some type of art that you can, you can steadily progress and work towards, right? And for me, I was an athlete later on in my high school, life. I didn't start football until my senior year in high school. So
Wow.
um, I think that there are definitely skill sets that are highly transitional. Um, with football, you're on a schedule, and there are processes that are at play there. You have to train year round, right? So you have to be
Hmm.
super disciplined. You've got to be organized. You got to show up on time. And, I think for me, football just really helped to harness all of my desire to just grow. And what it was able to do for me, it was able to make sure that I had a plan, right? Every day I had a structured plan because my time was so valuable. And being a student athlete in college and transitioning, I guess the transition from college to the NFL was the biggest transition for me because I was juggling so much. Being a student athlete, you have training table, you have your studies, you're traveling, you have to do the weights early in the morning at 6 a.m., but before you hit the books and hit your classes. And so when I transitioned from college to the NFL, all of that went away, right? And so, but
Hmm.
being a professional athlete, I mean, you would eat, sleep, drink, training, right? 24/7, right? And if you weren't training, you were studying, right? You were studying the opponent and looking at all their tendencies, breaking down film and doing those types of things. We still do that to this day. I'm here in Tennessee visiting a couple of our locations, and when we go in to consult with our franchise partners, we come in with a different perspective. We're highly operational, right? And
Hmm.
so we have to take a look at, okay, what are you doing that's working? What are you doing that's not working? You know, what are your margins looking like? And so it's kind of a full game plan. It's a process that we go down. What does your sales pipeline look like? What are some of the challenges that you're
Hmm.
having with your messaging? And then we get into some of the things that Chad has been so wonderful to create, like the resource-based selling, deliverables,
Hmm.
educating them on how to position those in the marketplace. So I think for us, just being an athlete, it was kind of we had an advantage coming into business. And a lot of people don't realize that those skill sets that you've developed are highly transferable. Um, and it's just not only in what you're doing on the day to day. From a brand perspective, it's great because I'm also here doing a charity event for the NFL this week. We're raising awareness and money for children and women here in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. And so that our business acumen and our ability to drive sales has enabled us to secure a relationship with the NFL. We take care of the players, the retired players, the coaches. And in addition to that, we're very involved in the community, raising awareness around a lot of local issues. And so from a sales perspective, it works. From an operational perspective, it works.
Hmm.
And then also, just Chad and I are very, very competitive. We want to compete for the business. That's just kind of what drives us. So I would think that when you sum it all up, just the tenacity and the discipline and the
Hmm.
structure are the three things that I would say give us a big advantage in the marketplace.
Oh, I totally, totally agree. That tenacity, that grit, that self-discipline, combined with the playbook and a competitive drive, and then your ability, because of your connections, to open up some doors that have benefited others and, of course, benefited Amada. Chad, did you have anything you wanted to contribute to that transferable skills and uh, how that has benefited you and Tafa and Amada in general?
Yeah, I think as I kind of think about it, I'll say this is kind of answering the opposite of what you asked, but transferable skills. One thing that I saw that I really loved about working with Tafa and the potential of when he invited me to start this was when we met that client and we went into his house and we were on such a ground level, making such a big difference. I think one of the things that drove me away from corporate America, and it wasn't something that I saw a lot there, but it was that deep connection and a really purpose-driven business. I think what kind of drove me out of corporate America was I'd gotten so far to the point where it was a very business environment. When I had first started, it was connecting with doctors and nurses, but it had really become more of a business job. But when I got to meet with that client with Tafa, I think the one thing that drove me into becoming an entrepreneur was that connection. And I think what I took with me was, look, I want to take a lot of the corporate things that I've learned and a lot of the learnings of how to work within a system, but I really want to make a difference on an individual level, whether that was with the caregivers or with clients that we worked with. It's interesting. Last night I was speaking with my son, and he just started working as a caregiver for us in our Orange County operation. And he talked to me for like 20 minutes about the guy he was taking care of, who was a World War II veteran who was at Iwo Jima. And he talked about stories. This is his first day of taking care of this guy, and he talked to him for about 2 hours. He's an older gentleman, obviously, if you start doing the math. But my son was like transformed, and he talked to me for 20 minutes about meeting this senior. And I think that's what this is about. I think what I wanted and what I'm seeing other people want is more of a purpose-driven business that they can work in and day out and make a difference in seniors' lives, make a difference in caregivers' lives. So it's, to answer your question, my first thought to answer it was, actually, there's some things I brought over, but there's some things that I wanted to do completely different. Mm-hmm. And that is that really deep level, on the ground, in the weeds connection. And it kind of goes back to our first value of compassion, mm-hmm. of just loving and connecting with people.
So it's still about moving the ball down the field, but right? It's still
absolutely.
There's purpose in it. There is.
Yeah.
I mean, as you were telling that story about the Hiroshima vet and your son, I wanted to cry. I mean, that is an intimate connection.
Yeah.
And an intimate relationship that your son now has with this man who gets to tell his story, and the legacy that he is, you are leaving in your son, and your son is learning from this elder. It is a purpose-driven business run with a playbook. It's run in such a way that we are making a difference. But at the same time, we're getting these results in our clients' lives and also helping our franchisees build successful businesses. It's I can't remember who said this originally. I think it was Zig Ziglar. We help enough other people get what they need and what they want, then we ourselves are taken care of. So let me ask both of you this. This purpose-driven side of both of you. Football didn't give that purpose. That was just about goals and winning and competing and being stronger or whatever, or more agile than your competition. So for both of you, you needed a bigger mission, a bigger purpose. How did you discover that was missing in your life? It sounds like in a little bit for you, Tafa, you kind of saw it with your mom and may have vicariously picked up on it, but how did you kind of figure it out that something was missing?
Well, Tafa, I'll start with that, because I definitely had something that I recognized was missing. I mean, I had a really successful career and I love what I did, but it was that day when I went out that I explained before. It's that lunch where Tafa and I went out and he invited me to visit his client, and just spending 45 minutes with that guy. It was like, I told him after, you're so lucky and blessed to do what you do, because in that 45 minutes, it had such an impact on me to think that you could be doing a job, and he owned his own business at that point, where all he did was have those deep level of connections. And that's with the caregiver, that's with the client. It's what I explained with my son, even last night. These are very deep intimate relationships that you build with people, because they're, number one, at the very end of their life. They're very open. They're sharing things. I mean, it's a raw period. It's a very raw period with the family members, the sons, the daughters. In many cases, we're dealing with, the mortality or the fact that their parents may not be around forever. So to me, that was, I mean, that one instant, it was deep for me. And it actually reminded me of experiences that I'd had growing up. I was similar to Tafa. I grew up in a large family, and we did a lot in our church to help other people and to serve. And it was just like, in that one day, it kind of just hit me like a 2x4. And it was enough to leave my career. Like, hey, I'm going to cash out my 401k, and I want to do this.
Out of here.
It felt good to just be with people in that type of environment. And Tafa had always kind of been, that was, I would say, from the time he got done playing in the NFL. And there is something deeply connecting about being on a team, whether it was in college. I didn't play in the NFL, but there are deep levels of connection and loyalty that are built in those locker rooms. And I think that does carry over. You do want that. When I left football, you really miss that camaraderie in that environment. And to be back into a relationship, when Tafa and I got back together, and when we started the business, there was deep levels of trust, camaraderie. I mean, you have to have that. And it's very similar to being in the locker room.
Yep. And commitment. I have your back, you have my back. Tafa,
Yeah.
I'm going to have you answer that, but I'm going to interject kind of a personal thing. I'm a missionary's daughter, and so I'm very purpose driven. And I had a very difficult time about 9-10 years ago. Just a huge thing happened to me where everything was, boom, gone in my life. And I remember going through this, pleading with God, what in the world just happened, and what's the purpose of my life? And I think the answer I kept getting through mentors that were working with me from my church was, you don't know yet. Just go about your Father's work every day. Just get up and do what the Father, your Creator, has for you to do, and your purpose will be uncovered. And it sounds like in that moment for you, Chad, you knew there was a bigger purpose for your life than being a great Pfizer executive. And you recognized it so quickly that, boom, cash in that 401k and go do something else. So our show is about passion. It is about purpose and discovering that. And not all of us get to. Sometimes it takes a crisis. Sometimes it takes an awakening. Sometimes we're raised kind of understanding it. And it sounds like the height of that moment was that particular event. Tafa, in our final moments, tell us a little bit about purpose for you. It clearly is a heart-driven thing for you. Do you have additional things you want to add to this idea of purpose and how Amada fulfills that purpose in people's lives?
Well, first off, thank you for sharing that story, because that's great. I think in life we all have challenges, and you think up, you look up in the sky, and you question your creator, why me, right? And sometimes when you really think about it, it's why not you, right? You're the best person to go through this, and you're going to have a lot of challenges and even suffer persecution in some cases for just even your belief system, right? But for us, this has always been about other people. Like, our business is about serving others. It's plain and simple. This is a ministry that we've been able to, expand throughout our community and throughout the country. And the great thing about it, it's something that we love. It's, for me, it's always been a part of my upbringing. And I don't know if it's just part of my culture. My mother's from the Pacific Islands and my father's African American. He was always entrepreneurial minded. He had several businesses. And so that played a large role in my life. And I wanted to be like my dad. I still do. He's the most kindest, gentlest man, biggest man you'll ever meet. But he just has such a big heart. And my mother has always had a heart to serve others. And, so again, I tell people we've just figured out a way to monetize our ministry. That's all this is. And so for us, it's great. So when we look at expanding into different counties, into different cities, different states, it's all about the people. Do you have the right DNA to do this? Are you being led or driven by the same moral compass that we all have? But do you have a passion for serving others? Because if you have a passion for serving others, irregardless of whether you get paid or not, and you can take a ministry minded approach to driving jobs in your community, helping families during a time of need, we can teach you all the aspects of running the business, but this has got to be led by your heart. And so if you're doing this for the right reasons, the financial rewards will come. It may come a little bit later than you had anticipated, because this is an investment. You have to invest in yourself. You have to trust the process will play out. But if you're able to do that and put your purpose first, then like every large company that's been successful, they'll let you know that if you drive with purpose, all the rest plays out. And so that's kind of what we preach and what we teach here at Amada. And it's great. We have a phenomenal system. We have wonderful people that lead with their hearts, and great things are happening for us. So we're really fortunate and really blessed to have a system that we can just reinforce those types of things. And it's been great. We love our jobs. We love the work that we're doing. And it's just great.
It is great. I have watched you since early days, so it's been fun to observe. I love Amada. I love the purpose. I like that you articulated that this is a mission field for you. You have monetized your mission in life. I was given a book some years back by someone in franchising called Tent Making, and it addressed just this: how you can take your ministry and have it also be your career, right? Your business. So the two of you have done that successfully. Okay, how do we get hold of you? We have individuals that would want to learn more about Amada Senior Care. How do we learn more about you?
Go ahead, Tom.
Well, the best way to learn more about us is visit our website. It's amadaseniorcare.com. And whether you're looking for an opportunity for work, I mean, we're really looking for good people to come and join us. We are at a point right now where we just love visiting with caregivers. And even if you haven't been a caregiver before, that's okay. If you come to us and you want to serve another person, we'll teach you how to do that. So that's first and foremost. Secondly, for an opportunity to work alongside with us for a franchise opportunity, you can go to amadaseniorcare.com. On the right-hand side of the screen, you can click on franchising opportunities. That will put you in touch with our franchise development team, who's led by Marcos Mora and Tim Valencia. And they can answer any questions that your viewers or your readers may have. And then, from that point, if you need to get in touch with Chad or I, you can reach us at Tafa at amadaseniorcare.com. That's my personal email. And Chad at amadaseniorcare.com. So, that's the best way to get in touch with us.
Thank you, gentlemen, for spending time with me today. I got to learn some things about you I didn't know before, even though we've run in the same circles for a few years now. So thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thanks for taking time with us.
Yeah, we really appreciate your time as well.